But first to the opioid crisis. If there's any question about what it can do to someone's life, just Google my next guest, Chris Herren. See, there are three different Chris Herrens, very different. There's the basketball star, guard at, yes, Durfee High, then BC and Fresno State, then in the pros with the Nuggets and Boston Celtics. There's also Chris Herren, the addict.
As some of you may know, I have been battling a personal problem for the past 4 years. This is a winnable battle, and one I haven't won, but I'm here today to tell everyone that I've had a setback and that I've slipped up.
And then there's the man he is today, the anti-drug crusader with his organization, the Herren Project. Chris, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks
When you
for
see
having me.
pictures of yourself on the court, you're one of the best ever to play in the state. What does it conjure up in your head? What do you think of?
You know, it's always good to see. It's more important to my son than it is to me, you know, to sit down and let him see that footage. But it was good times.
But when you see your picture sitting next to Jerry Tarkanian, how old are you? 20 years old or something?
21.
21 years old, national press conference admitting you have all these addiction problems. And then we know all these stories. You're a Celtic. You leave, right before the game, you got to the parking lot in uniform to score, what was it, Oxycontin? Mm-hmm. When you see that video or you hear those stories, what does that do to you?
It's tough. It's tough to hear. It's tough to watch. Unguarded isn't easy to sit down.
That's the name of the documentary.
Yeah. You know, I speak around 200 times a year, and my introduction to the crowd is a 5-minute clip of Unguarded, and I stay outside. You know, it's never going to be easy to hear.
You know, one more thing about that. Do you tell the story to people about when one of your drug counselors, one of your many drug counselors, said to you, maybe the best thing is for your family to be told you're dead so they can just move on with their lives?
I end it that way because to me that was extremely powerful, that he had the courage, probably not the clinical way to go about it, but he had the courage to tell me that I should cut my kids loose and I should let them live.
Do you blame anybody but yourself for this?
I don't blame anybody.
Nobody. It's all you.
Absolutely not. I don't. It's me.
And you say, you know, when I see you in the court, and I'd heard about you long before I saw this, before I met you, I mean, you were up here. I mean, there was nobody better than you in the state at the time. Yet I read quotes like this: I wish I was a pro at being me. I didn't need a uniform to boost my confidence and self-esteem. Be a pro being you. You didn't have confidence. You didn't have self-esteem. Is that what led to this decade plus of horrible addiction?
You know, what I think is we've failed our kids. I think we should talk about the first day and not the worst day. I think kids expect some guy to come in their school and present and paint this picture of how bad drugs are. But I'm more interested in talking about where they begin. I also say to people, I wish somebody just asked me why. A very personal question, and I truly believe with kids it's the only one that matters. You know, why can't you be yourself on a Friday night?
I want to talk about the future in a second, but one more thing about the past. A lot of people like you who survived, and it seems prospering actually in a lot of ways, like you, say the hardest part is not even the drugs, the hardest part is living the secret life, living the lie around people you love, like your incredible wife, Heather, and your kids. Is that the hardest part? I mean, you did live a lie for virtually all those years, right?
I did. You know, my wife found out relatively early as far as, because I was on $25,000 a month of OxyContin,
$25,000 a month.
Yeah, 1,600 milligrams a day. The money goes fast, and my wife found out early. So the lie was out between us. I still had to put up this facade, paint this picture that I was this professional basketball player, which is extremely difficult to live with. It's hard to walk around as this very successful Boston College, Boston Celtic, knowing that I'm battling this beast within.
She stuck with you, which to me is amazing. Are you strong enough? Could you have stuck with her if she were the one with the addiction?
Don't put me on the spot like that.
I'm serious. Really?
I hope so.
Okay.
I would hope so. I mean,
so you mentioned a minute ago, you talked to kids about the future. Part of what I've read about you and seen you, you say, you know, when you were a kid and these people would come into the high school and do these anti-drug things and whatever, you'd think they were losers, you know, they did nothing. I mean, I remember the same thing when I was in high school. So why can you sell your message to kids now and prisoners and others, and they couldn't sell you? What's the difference?
Because it's not my story, it's their story.
What do you mean by that?
It's more about them than it is about me. I mean, it's really hard to identify with the Boston Celtic who became a heroin addict. it's not hard to identify with the 14-year-old boy who didn't have confidence to dance without it, or couldn't walk into a house party because the courage wasn't there unless a six-pack was with me. It's those moments that I think we fail to talk about and teach our kids. And kids understand that, you know? I mean, when I ask them, how come on a Friday night you've lost that ability? They they put their heads down because they know that's the one that hurts.
And is this working? I mean, it seems, when I just, again, from afar, see these audiences, the reaction, again, whether it's some guy in jail for a couple of dozen years or some high school kid, or I see people in, military people in uniforms, it seems like they really connect. Is it as good and successful as it appears to be from afar?
I hope so. I really do.
Did you ever think you had this in you? I mean, this isn't what you set out to be.
No, I didn't. But I was one. One family helped me. And look what that's done. Chris Mullin and his wife Liz.
Great basketball star, Hall of Famer too, right?
Right. Reached out to me and gave me a second chance. And I want to pass that on. I want to pay that forward. So.
And an alcoholic, we should say he is. So he has firsthand experience. It's not just charitable.
Right.
He knows.
Recovering.
He knows, excuse me, a recovering alcoholic. Yes. So what else do you do with the Herren project? And why'd you create this thing? Why'd you decide to do this thing?
I created it because of the Mullins. I knew what it was like to be a guy in an emergency room that had no place to go. I remember walking out of that emergency room in Fall River contemplating suicide. I did not want to walk through my front door and look my kids in the eye and tell them Daddy overdosed again. So I knew that feeling, and I knew that I was helpless and there was no place to go, and if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be here today. So I wanted that. I wanted to be part of that solution for people.
So you're helping scores of other people who are suffering through what you suffered through today through the Herren Project.
I try. You know, we assist families. We scholarship families who can't afford treatment. We navigate their way.
Which is absurdly expensive, and there are not enough beds.
Absolutely.
10, 15, 20,000 bucks a month for some of this stuff.
And we handle the navigation process for them. Most families wake up, they're not ready for a phone call from a doctor to say, your son just overdosed.
Couple of quick things for you. You know that the politicians, in bipartisan fashion in the state, are obsessed with this opioid crisis now. Governor has proposed 72-hour involuntary commitment, no court order, for an addict that comes in if a doctor or a healthcare professional deems it appropriate. Is that a good idea?
You know, not to toot my own horn, but I think I brought that to the governor's
Is that
attention.
true to Charlie Baker?
Yes.
Really?
Because my thing is I almost killed myself. But if you walk into an emergency room and you say you're contemplating suicide, you're held for 72 hours. I was, you know, and many people overdose, brought back to life, and they're put right back on the street. And not only are they put back on the street, they're put back on the street in full withdrawal. Narcan puts you in a full withdrawal. So you're sending someone who's extremely sick, depressed, and right back onto the streets where they just came from. And to me, from a medical standpoint, it's reckless.
So marijuana, recreational marijuana on the ballot in November next year, how are you voting?
Absolutely not.
Because you see it as a gateway, is that the deal?
It's the first page of every drug addict story. Just ask them.
Chris Herren, you're doing great work, and congratulations for all
Thanks.
of it. Really good to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you as well.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And you can find out more about Chris and his terrific work online at theherrenproject.org.